I don't think that whatever the circumstances are, that he ran out on a subpoena.
Sammy Davis Jr. did many things, but one of the things he was famous for was his iconic performances as a singer and a dancer. He was one of the few people who shattered the racial barriers in Hollywood during that time, and he did it all with unmatched charisma. However, behind the spotlight, his life was a whirlwind of heartbreak and controversy. From his numerous marriages to his financial ruin, his story is both a tragedy and a lesson. Let's look at his abandoned house, women, children, and the net worth he left behind. The Forgotten Mansion of Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr., who has successfully made a name for himself as one of the most iconic entertainers of the 20th century, has been known to have many houses. The most iconic one, however, is the mansion tucked away in Beverly Hills, California. This mansion once echoed with laughter and jazz music, but now it sits alone, fading away as time passes. This house was regarded by many, not just as a home, but as a lavish estate that held so many memories and tales of a wonderful time. The home, which came with very elegant Art Deco bones, was the home of the iconic star Sammy Davis Jr., making it a historical piece in Hollywood. However, it wasn't just Sammy's presence that made the place a star. The house already had its magic long before Sammy discovered it. The mansion was built in 1941 and by the legendary architect John Elgin Wolfe. John must have done extraordinary work with this mansion because it didn't take long before it became one of the crown jewels of Beverly Hills. John built the house to have a very distinctive Hollywood Regency style. He carefully mixed old-world glamour with a few modern designs to make the house an exception from others. However, the place looked like a huge exception because the entire house had a style entirely different from what the people of that century were used to. So, a few years after the house had been completed, it became a highly sought-after property. Finally, Judy Garland, her then-husband Vincente Minnelli, and their daughter Liza Minnelli purchased it. This beautiful family moved into the home in 1944, and during their time there, they made the house experience some of its best years as a Hollywood home. The couple always stated that one of the things that they loved so much about the house was its secret room, which was hidden behind bookshelves. In this secret room, Judy would often go to retreat and get away from the complex life she lived. The house belonged solely to the couple until they unfortunately divorced in 1948. After this, the home was sold, and it slowly found its way into the hands of a legend. During the mid-1950s, Sammy had reached the peak of his success, and he was financially buoyant enough to purchase the mansion. By this time, he had become an established singer, dancer, and actor, and was a well-known member of the Rat Pack. He had everything it took to own such a mansion, and when he moved in, the first thing he did was reinvent the place. Sammy saw the potential that the house had and knew that with just a minor retouching, he could bring the whole house up to standard. And that was what he did. He poured his emotions and creative mind into the estate, and finally created a home that many people called the entertainer's dream. He took the spacious outdoor space that they had and expanded it, including a lavish swimming pool surrounded by bamboo and banana leaf trees. Whenever he had guests in this part of the house, the guests would feel like they were on a private tropical escape. He also went on to build an iconic one-room, 100-square-foot pool house that had 2 bathrooms and a marble bar. Inside the house, he added a media room, which he used mainly for viewing films and entertaining his friends. Being an iconic entertainer, Sammy knew he could not go out to record whenever he wanted a creative session. So he added a recording studio to the house, allowing him the freedom to create music without leaving his humble abode. In summary, Sammy made this 11,000 square feet house to include a guest house, crystal chandeliers, plush furniture, and velvet drapes. This building was a home and a statement of his successful life. Sammy enjoyed his stay at this house. However, due to unforeseen reasons, he had to lease the mansion to the band in 1969. The band is a Canadian-American rock group with deep roots in America. When the band stayed at the house, they turned the Polo into a recording studio and started working on their album, The Band. This was so good that it later became a rock classic. From the pictures that the band took in the home, it is evident that there was a different energy there. Some of these pictures included the bandmates lying around by the poolside or jamming in the studio, simply enjoying the lifestyle of Hollywood in the house. Life could not be better at this point, but during the late 1980s, it all began to go downhill because, after many years of success, Sammy Davis Jr. got buried in over $5 million in debt. This debt that he unfortunately owed the IRS came from his many years of mismanaging his money and spending lavishly. Plus, he had a lot of back taxes that he never took care of. All these accumulated over the years, and soon the IRS knocked on his door. Sammy knew about this debt and could not do anything when the IRS took some of his properties. However, he began auctioning off his belongings to recover his debts. After many years of struggling to clear his debt, Sammy finally passed away in 1990 at the age of 64. The cause of his demise was throat cancer. When Sammy passed, he left a legacy and a huge financial mess. To settle this chaos, his mansion was sold off, and since then, it has passed through several hands. However, the same mansion was left vacant for a decade, and because it had no owner, it was unfortunately not maintained, which made it lose its shine. Some photos of this place showed furniture filled with dust, cracked marble tiles, and faded wallpaper. Even the sparkling blue water that the Polo once had became drained and dirty. This new image of the house struck a bad chord in the heart of the public. Soon, people began to wonder why such a place that once housed so many legends could be forgotten and thrown away like that. Fortunately, the home was not meant to stay vacant and lonely forever because, in 2010, the house was bought by a new owner who was extremely passionate about it and gave it a full-scale restoration. The goal of these new owners was simple. They wanted to preserve the very essence of the mansion while working diligently to ensure it maintained the standard of modern houses. To make sure that the history of the home was not washed away, the people ensured that they did not touch the secret room where Judy Garland often retreated. They preserved it, making it like a time capsule. However, they replanted the gardens that Sammy had planted, restored the decaying walls, polished the staircase, and modernized the recording studio. The new owners did such great work in the house that when it eventually hit the market again, real estate listings categorized it as Hollywood royalty pedigree. The house also got everyone's attention because of its incredible history and its new sophisticated features. Today, the home stands out from other houses and still holds stories of the legends who lived there. Love, race, and resilience. Sammy Davis Jr. glowed in the spotlight. With every audience he had, he continually dazzled them with his dancing, singing, and even comedy skills. He had a successful professional career, but his love life was complicated. Sammy had 3 wives, each of whom he married at different times. His first wife was Lorraine White. His marriage to Lorraine White began in 1958 and ended in 1959. This marriage was short because many reports stated it wasn't born from love, but fear. This story began in 1957 when Sammy had just reached the peak of his fame, and he found love in the arms of Kim Novak, one of Hollywood's biggest actresses at that time. This love affair had one problem. Kim was white. Back in that era, it was an abomination for an interracial relationship to take place. People considered it dangerous and controversial. However, the love between these two was blazing hot, and they could not keep apart. This led to rumors of their relationship reaching the head of Columbia Pictures, Harry Cohn. Harry was in charge of Kim's career, and when this backlash started, it was very intense. According to many newspapers, including Vanity Fair, Sammy received many death threats because of his relationship with Kim. Some of these threats even came from the mafia. One of the most bone-chilling threats went with a strict warning that if he did not end his relationship with Kim, he might lose his remaining eye. Sammy knew that if he lost his remaining eye, he would go blind, seeing as he had already lost his first eye during a bad car accident in 1954. As time went by, these violent threats just became too much for Sammy to bear, and so he made a very desperate and bizarre plan to escape all the troubles that were coming his way. His plan was simple. He would marry a black woman, and then in came Lorraine White. Lorraine was a singer and dancer. The two did not date for long before Sammy proposed, and their wedding took place in Las Vegas in 1958. Later, Sammy confessed to his close friends that the marriage was just to cover up and serve as a solution to the problem he had gotten himself into. He also added that marriage was pushed on him by the same people who had wanted to preserve Kim's image and their power. Sammy had no love for Lorraine, and as a result of this, the marriage was extremely rocky from the start. They were barely seen in the same house together, and soon they both filed for a divorce. Whenever Sammy looked back at that marriage, he saw it as a very cold arrangement to escape a situation he had lost control over. However, this did not stop him from seeking love again. He was determined to do it on his terms this time. Who did the legend marry next? Sammy was married to Mae Britt from 1960 to 1968. 2 years after he left Lorraine, he took another shocking step. This couple met in 1959, and by the time they met, Mae was a Swedish actress. She was an exceptionally beautiful woman, famously known for her European films. The two hit it off almost immediately, and it didn't take long before their relationship blossomed. Sammy was extremely open about his relationship with Mae and did not try to hide her like he did with Kim. Their love continued to blossom, and on the 13th of November 1960, they got married at his Beverly Hills home. They had a very private ceremony. This marriage was not born out of fear or force because both parties truly loved each other. Unfortunately, love is not all it takes because they experienced many struggles in their marriage. By the time of their marriage, interracial marriage was still illegal in over 30 states in the United States. As a result, their union sparked outrage in Hollywood. Many organizations stopped working with them. For example, May's contract with 21st Century Fox was terminated immediately after her wedding. Sammy, on the other hand, still received a lot of death threats. When the lovely couple even attended John F. Kennedy's inauguration, Sammy was uninvited from performing because they did not want the public backlash that came with their interracial marriage. However, the couple did not allow the death threats to deter them from doing the needful and continuing in their love. They continued to build their family amid the chaos, and in 1961 they had a daughter named Tracy. The couple later adopted 2 sons, Mark and Jeff. They continued building their family, not listening to any words from the public. Unfortunately, their career and racism took their toll on their marriage, and they got divorced in 1968. Later, Tracy came out to share that while her parents loved each other, their marriage was filled with many challenges that became too much for them to overcome. However, their love was among those who broke boundaries and changed people's perception of the world. After Sammy and May divorced, Sammy felt depressed and tried to find his feet again. After a few months of being alone, he finally met Altavice Gore, a dancer and actress. He met her in 1968, and by then, Altavice was performing in the musical Golden Boy. The two clicked immediately, and by 1970, they got married in a ceremony officiated by Reverend Jesse Jackson. Sammy's relationship with Altavice was very different from his relationship with his previous wives. This was because the two not only shared love, but they also had the same lifestyle. Altavice would most times travel with him on his tours, join him on stage, and even stand beside him during all the highs and lows of his fame. For the first time, Sammy was in a relationship with a woman who was not a headline-grabbing actress or a controversial figure. She was just a supportive partner who silently navigated life as Sammy's equal. Their love blossomed, and in 1989 they adopted a son, Manny Davis. This way, they expanded their family for 1 year before Sammy passed. During their relationship, there were financial crises and personal struggles. The worst, however, was Sammy's failing health. However, even when Sammy began to battle with his throat cancer, Altavice stayed by his side. When he finally passed away, she inherited not just the responsibility of protecting his legacy, but the $5 million that he owed in debt to the IRS. Still, Altavice fought to keep Sammy's name and story alive. She struggled financially till she finally passed away in 2009. Sammy Davis was not just a musical legend and a husband. He was also a father, and fatherhood came with its complexities. Sammy had 4 children, 1 biological daughter and 3 adopted sons. Sammy Davis's children. Sammy's daughter, Tracy Davis, was born on the 5th of July, 1961. She was a product of the love between May Britt and Sammy Davis. From birth, Tracy had to experience the magic and the messiness that came with being the daughter of a global icon. Her parents tried their best to fill her childhood with glitz and glamour. However, they also filled her world with absence and emotional distance. In her book, Sammy Davis Jr., My Father, Tracy opened up a lot about her life. She spoke about the bittersweet relationship that she had with her father. She didn't hide anything as she spoke about the way the man loved her and all the things he had missed during her formative years. She added that when she was a child, she would often long for his presence, but his fame and touring schedules usually kept him away from her. The book also stated that both father and daughter found their rhythm in later years. They finally reconnected and were able to heal the old wounds. It was during this period that Tracy discovered a deep bond rooted in understanding and forgiveness. Tracy later went on to write a second book, Sammy Davis Jr., A Personal Journey with My Father. This book was published in 2014 and painted a vibrant picture of the man named Sammy Davis. The book spoke about how he struggled with racism and his unhealthy habit. By writing these books, Tracy preserved and humanized her father's memory. Everyone who read her book got a rare glimpse of Sammy Davis's life. Sadly, Tracy passed away on the 2nd of November, 2020. She was 59 years old when she passed. During the 60s, Sammy and May decided to adopt 2 sons. Mark was adopted in 1963 and Jeff in 1965. The couple did this at a time when it was taboo for interracial marriage to take place. This couple was determined to ignore the rules and build a blended family. They ensured that they raised these boys in the spotlight. However, when they grew up, they decided to live far away from the spotlight. Much is not known about Jeff because he stayed far away from the limelight. However, Mark has occasionally expressed his struggles growing up in a famous home. He usually said that carrying the Davis name had many expectations and constant comparisons. However, it was clear to the boys that Sammy was very intentional about his parenting. He wanted his children to feel valued, loved, and protected. Mark often stated that his father's commitment to raising his sons felt like a form of rebellion against judgment, racism, and the idea that every family had to fit into a single mold. To him, his decision to adopt two boys was not just personal, it was also political because it conveyed that love was not limited to skin color or convention. 1 year before Sammy passed away, he and Altavice Davis adopted a baby boy named Manny. By the time this boy was adopted, Sammy was struggling financially, and he was also dealing with a lot of significant health issues. However, this did not stop him from loving this baby boy. The adoption of Manny was not easy because it came during a time when Sammy had tax debts, career complications, and health battles. In summary, his world was changing speedily. Finally, Sammy passed away in 1990 and left everything he owned to Altavice. When Altavice later passed away in 2009, she left Manny with his father's property, and Manny became the executor of the Davis estate. This role was not a small one because it meant that Manny would have to oversee everything from music rights to licensing deals, just so that he could preserve the image of his father. The young man worked behind the scenes for many years to protect his father's image. He participated in almost every public event and even managed his media projects. Although Manny was too young to know his father, he worked diligently to become one of his most important advocates. The tragic death of Sammy Davis. During the late 1980s, Sammy Davis cemented his place as a legend in the entertainment industry. However, even when this period was one of his best, it was also a very crippling time for him. This was because in 1989 he was diagnosed with throat cancer. This condition was highly attributed to his years of heavy smoking. For an entertainer like Sammy, this was a terrible blow, and this disease affected the whole community as well because it now meant that he wouldn't be able to perform like before. However, there was hope for recovery initially as Sammy underwent radiation therapy. For a while, it sincerely looked like he had finally beaten this disease, but the following year came with sad news. Sammy had something that he believed was just a gum infection, but it then turned out to be cancer, and this time it was inoperable. Sammy did not let this sickness wear him down. He still showed grace and optimism. Then, in April 1990, a tribute titled Sammy Davis Jr. 60th Anniversary Celebration was aired. This program brought together a lot of big names in Hollywood, and they all honored his amazing contribution to music, film, and civil rights. This was a celebration and farewell because, on the 16th of May, 1990, a few weeks after the anniversary was aired, Sammy Davis passed away in his Beverly Hills home. He was 64 years old when he passed, and the cause of his demise was complications from throat cancer. Everyone in the entertainment industry mourned his passing. That night, the Las Vegas Strip had to dim its lights for 10 minutes to honor him. This gesture was extremely symbolic and usually only reserved for the most notable figures. Sammy was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. He was buried next to his father, Sammy Davis Sr., and Will Maston, his longtime friend and mentor. Hundreds of people attended his funeral. Sammy Davis's demise was the end of an era because he was not just an entertainer but a man who broke racial barriers and symbolized the industry's resilience. Sammy Davis's net worth. Sammy Davis built an iconic career for himself and was known as one of the best entertainers of the 20th century. His legacy is still being discussed, and the young man is consistently recognized for his immense talents and extraordinary contributions to music, film, and television. His career lasted for over 5 decades, and during that period he was able to amass millions of dollars through his movies, concerts, endorsements, and all the houses he had in Las Vegas. Unfortunately, his fame and fortune did not stop his financial legacy from being marked with many financial missteps, backed by his extravagant lifestyle and carelessness. These attitudes of his ultimately left him in a state of debt till he passed away in 1990. According to reports, Sammy earned an estimated $50 million throughout his career. From the time he started performing with the legendary Rat Pack until he started his solo career, and even became a very successful singer and actor, Sammy enjoyed unparalleled success. Research shows that Sammy Davis was one of the highest-paid entertainers of his time. He secured a very lucrative contract for most of his live performances and film appearances almost yearly. His houses in Las Vegas were so iconic, proving he had a good eye for real estate. As a result of this reputation, he also hosted a large audience, and his endorsements and recording deals contributed greatly to his wealth. Sammy did extremely well for himself, but unfortunately, his finances were not that smooth or sound. This was because the iconic entertainer had a very lavish lifestyle that, at the moment, matched his celebrity status. Sammy was known for constantly buying exotic cars, jewelry, and houses, all of which contributed greatly to his financial downfall. His love for luxury was reflected in his love for expensive cars and other collectibles, which combined to drain his resources. This legend often lived a life outstripping his income, which soon cost him a lot. The main reason this icon had financial issues was poor money management. Every report showed that Sammy was struggling to maintain his financial affairs and was not managing his wealth properly. A typical example of this was when he became entangled in tax shelters and later found out that it was a fraudulent act. This proved to him that he was too nonchalant about his finances. At the time he passed, Sammy owed the IRS $5 million. This debt later increased to $7 million due to interest and penalties. Unfortunately, Sammy's financial troubles were well known in the entertainment industry, and soon after his demise, his family was left to sort out these debts by themselves. The first person who inherited his legacy and debt was his widow, Davis Davis. She had been married to Sammy for 2 decades, and in that marriage, she was faced with managing his estate and its financial challenges. Before long, she auctioned off many of Sammy's belongings to pay off the debts. These personal belongings included his cars, jewelry, and other valuables that the man had. However, Sammy's finances were not the only thing she had to deal with. She also had to navigate all the complexities that came with a public figure's estate, while also mourning the demise of her husband. Davis tried her very best to keep his legacy alive, and she was able to clear his debt. She, with the help of her attorney, Sonny Murray, negotiated a settlement with the IRS, allowing her to regain control of Sammy's legacy and pursue further projects related to his life story. After Davis passed away in 2009, her son Manny Davis took control of the estate and all the responsibilities that came with it. Manny, who was an adopted child, now found himself struggling to preserve the legacy of his father, whom many people knew to be a legend. The inheritance of his intellectual property also came with the inheritance of his ongoing financial challenges. Soon, Manny became the executor of the estate, and he worked diligently to ensure that his father's contributions to the entertainment world were not easily forgotten. He managed his musical catalog, film rights, and rights to his likeness. Manny worked extremely hard to ensure that he could uphold his father's legacy and preserve his contributions to the arts for future generations. Brief background. Sammy Davis Jr. was born on the 8th of December 1925 in Harlem, New York. He grew up in a world immersed in performance, and when he was a bit older, he joined his father and Will Maston in the Will Maston Trio. Sammy began to perform when he was just 3 years old, and because he was performing at such a young age, he was able to develop his skills as a dancer and singer. When he grew up, he slowly built a name for himself. People began to appreciate his talent and charisma, and soon he became a key member of the iconic Rat Pack alongside Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin. Sammy was popularly known for breaking racial barriers in Hollywood and Las Vegas, paving the way for future African-American entertainers. What do you think? Was Sammy Davis just a man trying to live his life on his terms, or was he a victim of fame and fortune? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories of legendary icons. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.